So hopefully you've heard we're going to have an organ information session on Sunday after both worship services about the possibility of getting a new organ. And you may be sitting here in these pews thinking, well, why do we need a new organ? It sounds all right. It's loud enough. Well, hopefully in this video we'll convince you why we need a new organ and why the organ we found is the perfect one for Derry. So here's our organ. It's an early 1960s Reuter. When the church installed it in the early 60s, they needed a new organ for their sanctuary. And they got a basically good organ at that time. Kind of a budget organ for the time. And in modern car terms, think about you buying a Saturn or a Kia because you need a basic car to get you where you're going, but you don't need a BMW or Mercedes right then. But you're also not thinking that Kia is going to last you 70 years. So this organ worked well for the time, but since then we've changed our sanctuary, we've changed the design, the acoustical space. It's no longer the right instrument for our sanctuary and our needs. So I brought our resident organ expert, Dan Stokes, a self-identified organ nerd, to tell us more about this organ. So Dan, you've been playing this organ for several months now. What are some of the challenges to this organ in this space where it may not be right for the future of worship at Derry?
Sure. To look at it, it looks like everything that needs to be here should be here. It was interesting when I started playing for worship at Derry, I quickly found out that the congregation sings well, the music program is tremendously active. When I started playing for hymns, I realized that of the whole range of the organ, from a whisper to just a goosebump-inspiring warmth, this much of the organ was ineffective because you couldn't hear it to support congregational singing, which leaves about this much range of sound to use. The other challenge is that the most brilliant stop on the organ, probably the loudest one, is very aggressive and harsh. So I find myself avoiding that because while you want to fill out the sound, if it's ugly, that's no good. So I found that when I'm playing hymns here, I pretty much go from using the organ at about 75% on up to 100%. You know, it's the last 90 to 100% is the part you'd want to be saving for Easter Sunday, but I play it every Sunday like it's Easter Sunday because you all sing so well.
So basically, sometimes you can't really hear the organ that well when the congregation's singing because it's loud enough, but you're not going to get the warm tones that really carry the singing. So it's like turning the volume way up to the point where it's distorting the quality of the sound.
Exactly. It was interesting. The first event I played for here was an event with handbells, Derry brass, and I was the organ and someone else was directing. And I kept hearing, we can't hear the organ. And I kept resisting that one strident stop. And I finally pulled that. You could hear the organ a little. And we'll talk later about why that is the way it is. But that's the challenge. Plus, when you're playing softly, the warmer, softer color sounds just really aren't heard. There are Sundays I literally play the prelude. When I finish, I look over at Stephen and Marie to let them know I'm finished because you can't hear it.
You were playing this great postlude the other Sunday, Viern's finale. And part of it I could hear, but I could sometimes see you playing and I cannot hear those notes at all. And I know it's a tremendous piece, but if I couldn't hear and I was up on the chancel, there's no chance anyone else is going to be able to hear it.
It goes back to the issue of dynamic range. You can get it loud enough, but you basically have to sustain that. It's kind of like having your spouse yell at you all the time. It gets old.
And do you not have much flexibility with this organ about different sounds?
That's right. There's not a lot of flexibility. And when it was installed, in the interest of trying to do something economical, there are a lot of the sounds that are reused in a lot of ways that actually limit how the organ can be used. They tried to economize, and in the process lost a lot of color. And like when I was playing the Vierne piece last week, there are times I lost the melody because my hands were playing up here, but the hands totally obscured the feet because the pedal division lacks the depth that you really need to play most organ literature or to add that inspiring moment on a hymn.
So we've had several different organ companies come in, look at our organ, look at our space. They've all agreed that this organ isn't a good instrument for our acoustical space. Can you kind of explain why this early 60s Reuter just doesn't work for us now?
Sure. When the instrument was installed in the early 1960s, the sanctuary was very different. Actually, I recall, because I took organ lessons here from 1972 to 1974, when this was a straight shot A-frame sanctuary. That's the space for which this instrument was designed. So part of the challenge we face now is there's significant more cubic volume to the room. So this organ wasn't designed for that space. It seems like, yeah, you could just make it louder by adding more, but basically it's like your house has a foundation, the organ has a foundation, and the foundation is the scaling of the what's called the principal pipes, and they were scaled for a smaller space. You've now got a larger space. The other challenge we're facing now is trying to find a way to overcome that shortcoming of the larger space and the organ not filling it. At some point, an organ technician went up and, attempting to do a good thing, tried to get the maximum volume out of each of the 1,500 pipes that are in this instrument. Well, in the process of doing it, we got a little bit more volume for the larger space, but lost the warmth and character that was probably intended and probably existed back when the organ was first installed. Additionally, this is an instrument built in the 1960s, when, as happens, there's often a reaction. In the first part of the 20th century, instruments were much warmer and more engaging. Organists went to Europe to study and came back thinking, we need to make the organ sound more like Bach's organ. So they tried to fix them by making them more bright. That was actually a good thing. Unfortunately, when pendulum swang a little too strongly to that side and lost the warmth. Thankfully, now people are building organs that get brilliance and get warmth.
So the 60s are kind of an aberration for organ builders, like 70s with home decor. No one wants avocado bathrooms anymore.
Yes.
We don't want these 60s style organs because of the sound that they give. It's not that deep rich, which is going to carry the congregational hymns and all those classic pieces people love to hear on the organ.
Yes, exactly.
So one of our challenges has been looking for a new director of music. Has been the actual organ. That when people find out what our organ is, they say pass. No thank you. They can't imagine themselves playing this organ long term. Even one of our serious candidates was asking, are we planning to get a new organ? Because he couldn't imagine playing this same instrument for the next 5 or 10 years into his future. It'd be like asking Sue George to do her technological job on a 1999 PC with Windows Vista. She could do it, but she would really hate doing it. Imagine doing your job with something that's really outdated or just not a good tool for you to use. It makes it less enjoyable. So I've been talking to people in this area about the organ, and even those who have come in to kind of play it say, well, I've been warned maybe I should check out this organ before I apply for this job because it's not a real good instrument to play. Or guest organs who have come have kind of admitted it's not really the best organ in the area. One of our guest organists, a student at Lebanon Valley College, was telling us, one of our other members, when he asked about the organ, he was polite and said, well, it's not as good as some of the other organs in the area. You definitely could use an upgrade. So we have a reputation of not having a really good organ. And if we really want to have this great music program that we're so proud of, we need the right instrument to help lead that. And the organ really is the best instrument to lead congregational singing. Now, Dan, you've played all kinds of organs in this area. You are in the AGO. How does this organ compare to organs at some of the other churches, or what's the word on the street about the Derry organ?
Well, it would be safe to say that most congregations if they have an instrument from the 60s, have at least approached it somehow or done something. A lot of those instruments built in the 60s, a number of them you'll find on a website called the Organ Clearinghouse, because churches, not all churches, but a church that is moving ahead with its music program realizes that this can be a real foundational piece. I will say that in my months being here at Derry, which have been delightful, This has been a wonderful part of life's journey. And when I came here, you could feel the energy and enthusiasm about music all around. I will tell you that this is the greatest limiting factor, actually, for Derry's music. And having been served congregations both in Nashville, Tennessee, and Louisville, Kentucky, I will say that as the organ was freed up to really lead in worship, and additionally do concerts and everything, but primarily worship is what this instrument is about, is leading in worship. That the energy that followed, the growth in choirs, and the interest from instrumentalists in the area, and as well as what it brought to concert series and those kind of things. The potential is that this step would really set Derry up for the future, and I think attracting the kind of musician long-term you want. I love being the bridge builder here, and I'm delighted to build this bridge, but I think doing something about the organ will certainly be a big part of that bridge to the future.
So a new organ will not only help us attract a director of music, an organist who will be here a long time and do great music, it'll also help attract new choir members, new instrumentalists who want to be here being a part of the worship and music at Derry.
I will say both in the congregations I served in Nashville, Tennessee, and in Louisville, Kentucky, that was clearly a result of something that happened as we did organ projects, yes.
So we have this organ. It's from the early 60s. Does it make any sense to refurbish this organ, add more pipes in the pipe chambers back there, just add to and make this organ a little better? Is that more cost effective? Would that be a good solution to the problem?
It certainly could be done. It wouldn't seem a wise thing to do. Probably the best comparison I can make is if you're a homeowner and you're looking at your original starter 1960s home, do you, does it make sense to add to it? Well, if it's got a great foundation and architecturally can do it in a way that makes sense, that's a great idea. But it wouldn't make much sense to add to a home if the foundation had problems, if there were some major plumbing difficulties in the way it was designed. At that point, yes, you could do it, but then when you go to resell it, those problems still exist.
And it still wouldn't be an attractional organ where someone would want to come in and say, ooh, I can't wait to be at this church, play this organ. It's going to be like taking that old Kia and maybe adding a new paint job and adding a new engine, but the body's still going to be the same. So it would cost less, but for not too much more, we could get a whole new replacement organ that would have a better foundation and better fit this space.
Yes, and that's, we'll get to that, but that's what's particularly exciting about the opportunity that's opened up here.
Yeah, so like a brand new organ, that might cost $1 million to $1.5 million, $1.8 million. Yes. I know in Williamsburg at the historic Bruin Parish Church, they just got a 48 rank organ, brand new, that's costing $1.8 million. And I don't think we need to do that here. We want to be good stewards of our money and our funds, but also bring in an organ that's going to attract. So we're looking at maybe getting historical organ, restoring it, that'll fit great in this church.
The way this has come about is actually astounding, and I didn't see it coming. I just got to be in the middle of it. But it's been interesting through conversations that have surfaced that actually came from the search for a director of music, from the initiation of those conversations and a relooking to just conversations about what are the great organs in the area, and came about conversations and then a phone call which led us to this unique instrument that's so highly regarded that we found in New Haven, Connecticut.
Yeah. So this organ in New Haven we found, it's a 1950 Aeolian Skinner. It's 41 ranks. Our current organ's 27 ranks. Now, some might say, well, we have a 60s organ. Why do we want an older organ from the 50s? Isn't that going backwards? Why is this organ, a 1950 Aeolian Skinner, such a great find for Derry?
It's a fantastic find. Aeolian Skinner is the premier company of the first part of the 20th century. Actually, they were active, Aeolian Skinner, a merger of two earlier companies, were active from the early 1930s until the early 1970s. Their heyday was from 1933 to 1956, when a G. Donald Harrison was president of the company. They had the brilliant mechanical input of E.M. Skinner, who was just the absolute genius of the organ world. And then G. Donald Harrison came from England and just brought a tonal idea and the construction of pipes. It was just the perfect marriage. When G. Donald Harrison died he was not even 60 years old yet in 1956, the fortunes of that company started a downturn. The instrument we're looking at was constructed in 1951, so it has the best of both worlds. The other unusual thing about it is here we have an instrument that we actually got to hear. The church closed a year ago, but the building is still open because that congregation is really concerned that this landmark instrument find a worthy home. In addition to that, you've got just an amazing quality that was built then, with the fact that it was rebuilt in 2008. Mechanically, it was gone over so that it would last into the future. So we've really got the best of both worlds. We've got absolute spectacular craftsmanship of wind chests. We've got wonderful pipe construction, and we've got warmth of sounds and just a whole tonal concept. Interestingly enough, in a room that has the same cubic area of this room here.
So you've played the organ. Mary Stryker's played the organ.
Yes.
What excites you about it that makes you think, man, I can't wait to play this organ? It's going to make somebody else really excited to come and have this instrument as part of their lives.
That's so easy to answer. The idea of playing a hymn, like a warm old gospel hymn like Just As I Am, or just like a prayer hymn with warmth in a way that can be inspiring without being aggressive. The idea of playing a holy, 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 awesome hymn of praise in a way that each verse just builds and builds until you finally get to the final stanza. And you just feel the voices of people coming together. That is just an exciting prospect. The idea of what it opens up in terms of accompanying the choir, again, with supporting the sound and not having a strident sound on top of that. Not to mention, during a communion service, the beautiful colors that are just leading us through times of reflection. It's a very exciting concept.
Would this be an organ that an organist would really want to come and play? Would it be an attraction?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So we were in New Haven. Jim George flew us up there. He heard the organ, and he said on the car ride that, he would kind of ask the question, why do we need a new organ? I'm just a guy in the pews. It sounds all right. Well, he heard this organ. He said, well, it sounded good. Then he came back to our church the next Sunday. And Sue George, behind the camera, tell us what he told you after that Sunday worship.
Yeah, so he went in thinking, why do we need this new organ? And it really wasn't until coming back to Derry and hearing this organ being played that he went, wow, there really is a huge difference. And so, yeah, ordinary person in the pew could tell a difference.
Yeah, so that's the organ we hope to bring to Derry. So we have this organ task force, which has been looking at this problem, looking at solutions, and they are really excited about this 1951 Aeolian Skinner in New Haven. One of the exciting things about it is this one company, Thompson Allen, has been working on this specific organ for over 50 years. One of the owners of the company's father helped originally install it in 1951. So they have a passion for this organ. They don't want to see it go somewhere far away. They want to keep working on it. So we know its pedigree. We know the people who have been working on it. And this company, they are the premier Aeolian Skinner restorers in the whole world. They have a great reputation. And that's one of the beautiful things. We are working with a company that has a good reputation. But it's often rare to be able to actually sit and play an organ that you're going to bring in and transplant to a new church. Often they are stored in a warehouse, and you just buy it kind of sight unseen, hoping it's going to sound good, trusting the company. We've actually had the privilege of hearing it and playing it. Now, you may be wondering, well, if getting a historic organ is such a good idea, why don't more churches do it? Because it will cost about half of what a new organ would cost that would be similar size and style. So, Dan, tell us a little about this idea of transplanting an organ from one church to another and how that will work.
Sure. Yeah, why don't more churches do it if it's such a great idea? Well, it's very similar. We laugh about we're getting an organ transplant. It would be very similar. It is very similar to a human organ transplant in that there are so many things that have to line up. In a human transplant, you're dealing with blood types, immune issues. It's not, you don't say, oh, I want a new kidney, and all of a sudden it's there. And things lining up, especially, it's a rare thing that you can get the place with the need to line up the organ that's ready to be donated. Sadly for the congregation who is losing this organ, they realized just very recently that they are simply not able to continue as a congregation. And so they have officially disbanded. They have continued to heat the building. They have continued to care for the organ because they realize what a prize they have. The timing is just amazing, and we're feeling a little bit of the push of that timing in that they'll be giving up the building in December. So the unfortunate thing, I guess, on our side is the fact that it gives us a push, but to have this opportunity is indeed a rare opportunity. So what will need to happen on our end is we will start to advertise should everything move ahead. But if the congregation and the session vote to move ahead, this organ will then be advertised. There's a website called the Organ Clearinghouse. We would list it there, and hopefully there'd be a congregation in which the space of this organ might work for them. I will also tell you there are organ enthusiasts who love to get instruments like this and install them in homes. There are not a lot of them, but they are out there. So we would put it out there and see if there would be someone for whom what this is here would work for their particular situation.
We met with a company earlier this week to see would this organ actually fit in our space. So tell us the good news that they told us.
The news couldn't be better. I really was stunned, to tell you the truth. It's like everything about the blood type and everything matching up for the transplant. That instrument will fit in the space that exists behind this screen up there. Literally, we don't have to move walls. Everything just lines up magnificently. So that was a delightful surprise.
So they're going to be getting us a full proposal here in the next few days of what it will cost. It's going to be a lot cheaper than buying a new organ. And our hope in coming to session is that we will raise about half the cost from the congregation and half the cost from a fund we have called the Legacy Fund. Now, we don't want to do a whole capital campaign where we're pushing the whole congregation to give to this. We're in the midst of our regular stewardship campaign. But we're reaching out to a few key donors who are really passionate about the music here, the instrument, the legacy, the history. As we're coming up on our 300th anniversary, this is a great way to secure the future of the church long term. So we're going to be talking to some of those donors, the choir, and we're hoping to raise anywhere between $300,000 and $500,000 to cover half the cost of this organ transplant. We'll have more information about the actual numbers on Sunday the 27th. They will give that full proposal to us later this week, and we'll share more about that on the 27th. But we hope you'll come to that organ information session, learn a little bit more, ask some questions, but this really is a unique opportunity to have this historic organ with this great story that's a perfect fit for our church. It's going to elevate our worship and our music, and it's such a great example of stewardship, not just of our funds, but also of materials, of an organ that's already served the Lord in a church for many years. It can continue to do that because these Aeolian skinners were made to last generations and generations. And with the care of the Thompson Allen Company, it's going to last well into the future and be a wonderful asset for Derry for generations to come.